Welcome to the Listen Up podcast, where we explore hearing loss, communication, connections, and health.
Hi, everybody. Dr. Mark Sims here. I'm the host of the Listen Up podcast, where I feature top leaders in healthcare. This episode is brought to you by Listen Up Hearing Center. I help patients to effectively treat their hearing loss so that they can connect better with their family and friends and remain independent. The reason I'm so passionate about hearing loss is because I lost my brother Robbie twice. First to hearing loss from radiation to his brain tumor, and then when he passed away. I only care for ears. I'm the E of ENT. I've performed over 10,000 surgeries and taken care of many more with hearing loss. I'm the founder of Listen Up Hearing Centers and written a book of the same name, Listen Up, A Physician's Guide to Effectively Treating Your Hearing Loss. If you want to learn more about that, go to listenuphearing.com to learn more. Today we have a great guest. It's Miss Cheryl Nolte. She's a hearing challenge coach, lip reading instructor, advocate consultant about hearing aids, tinnitus, and other hearing challenges, and a lip reading expert and interpreter. She's volunteered with HLA, church, and other nonprofits. She established Hearing Challenge Coach in 2019 to provide coaching, consulting, and lip reading interpretation for people with hearing impairment, as well as those who work with them. She's also a lip reading instructor and coach since 2014. She taught lip reading to over 150 people using a lesson plan and an instruction she's created based on over many years of research and practice. She created and published a book, Treasure Coast Hearing Guide. It's about to help people to find the best resources and solution to cope with their hearing loss. Without any strong hearing aids, she can't hear anything. Over the years, she's learned the importance of sitting in the front row, lip reading and reading body language to get the best hearing advantage. We're privileged to have Cheryl today on the podcast as a guest. Cheryl, thanks for coming on.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be able to talk to the world of people who are interested in communicating and may have some hearing challenges.
Sure, which is a big world.
It sure is. There's over 48 million people that have issues with hearing alone, and then we add to that the people with tinnitus, with balance issues, and hyperacusis, which is sensitivity to sound. All of those can affect their cognition.
Yeah, and that's just in the United States.
I didn't get what he said. I was still talking. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. The numbers you gave are just in the United States.
Yeah.
So there are a lot more. Sorry about that. So
one in 10 people had some sort of hearing challenge.
Yes. So tell me about your journey.
My journey started with hearing loss in the second grade when I had the measles and the chicken pox, one right after the other. My brother had the one, I had the other, and we swapped. And so in the third grade, when I went back to school, they did the annual testing of eyesight and hearing for children in Wisconsin, this was. And I had found out that I had lost about a third of my hearing at that time. So from that point on, instead of taking art in all my school years, from grade school through junior high school, my electives and my art classes were not those, they were lip reading classes. And I learned to lip read through 7 years of training that way and really got into learning it well. And then after that period of time, my hearing went down over the years due to several other things. I found out the hard way that drugs can affect your hearing. There are over-the-counter and prescription drugs that can affect your hearing. And also I found out, this didn't happen to me, but to several people I know through the hearing loss chapter, that anesthesia can affect your hearing. And so I've become passionate about helping people protect the hearing they have today and save it for tomorrow. That's one of my little favorite quotes.
So what advice do you give people to save your hearing today and protect it for tomorrow? In other words, what type of guidelines do you give them, at least in the medical context?
Yes. The first thing is, if you find yourself in a noisy situation and there are apps that tell you whether you're going over 85 dB, which is the level, really I use 80, but 85 dB is the recognized CDC level for too much sound. If you're exposed to that for even short periods of time over a regular period of time, it can damage your hearing. And anything over that in short bursts of time, really high, can cost you your hearing. So I teach that there's 2/3 of your hearing you can prevent from losing. One is noise. That's about 1/2 of the preventable cause. And drugs and chemical solvents like hairspray and bug spray and things like that, used incorrectly, can hurt your hearing. So I teach them how important it is to look for side effects on chemicals and side effects on any over-the-counter or prescribed drugs that you take, and also to pay attention to and avoid noise. If you want to be in a noisy area, if you have no choice, protect your hearing. Learn how to do that. There are headphones, there are different varieties of earplugs that you can use. People with hearing aids, turn them off. And that is another good reason to know lip reading.
And so when you're talking about chemicals and medicines, do you have a specific resource or guide or way to do that you recommend?
If you are in the doctor's office and they say, let me go ahead and prescribe for you, and I've had this happen, I'd say, which of those is the least damaging or has side effects to the least that will hurt my hearing? And or tinnitus. There are actually more of those that hurt, that activate tinnitus than there are that hurt your hearing, apparently, based on the numbers I've seen. There are so many people go in and they just take whatever the doctor gives them and that figure that they already know the history, but you have to remind them, you say, what will not hurt my hearing? And the same when you go into any procedure, if you have to use anesthesia, what will be the least likely to affect my hearing? I know that sometimes we have to have certain medicine, sometimes we have to have certain procedures, but protect yourself.
Yeah, my advice to listeners would also be to talk to your pharmacist too, because they actually know all of the medicines oftentimes. Sometimes the physicians don't know them all, and they can look at all the medicines you're taking and see if there's interactions as well. So that would be a piece that I people. And so you use lip reading and hearing aids throughout your entire educational career, is that correct?
Yes, from the 3rd grade on, I've used lip reading. I did not wear hearing aid until the 8th grade when I was given one. It had a cord that went around my neck. It had a plug-in to the ear, and it had a little box I had to hook onto my blouse.
So it was a body hearing aid.
One, yeah, in the 8th grade, that was donated by the Red Cross. And that was so many years ago. And I wore that one hearing aid. Had to change out the batteries. That was another interesting thing at that point in time. I wore that same hearing aid all the way through until I was graduating high school. And then I was able to, through the state subsidy, get actual hearing aids for both sides, because I did have loss in both sides. So hearing aids didn't come into play for me until the 8th grade. So from 3rd grade to 8th grade, I was strictly lip reading to enhance what hearing I did have.
And so I would assume school was a lot more work for you.
It was, in addition to the being earnest about what I was doing and knowing that I needed to really pay attention, which is a big importance. Learning how to listen was part of my lip reading training, and I talk about that in my classes, my lip reading classes. Learning how to study when you take notes, and the big thing for me was being able to take notes and have ability to ask my teacher if I missed something or I didn't ask something. If we just forget or don't know, you're going to miss out. So I think feedback is important, and asking questions even afterwards can help people a lot. I did in school try to achieve, and I actually did really well. The story of my dad and my teacher and my personality change when I was little was quite something. And then later in years in junior high school, especially, I was bullied. And that was no fun either. I was different from the group. And so I was more of a loner at that point. But I studied really hard, and I was able to take, even with hearing loss, by lip reading, shorthanded, 80 words a minute from different bosses that I had over time. And I learned to play the violin. Played the violin for 7 years and did really well with that. And I learned to speak clearly, so other people would speak clearly back to me. It's a response thing that I like to teach my lip reading students to use.
And so who taught you self-advocacy? Who would you say were the influences that taught you to advocate for yourself?
I was in denial for a while, trying to hide my hearing loss until I was in the 70s and married, and found that now, having a child, I had better address what is good and what is not good about what I do and set an example. And then I found the HLAA, the Hearing Loss Association of America, and became so interested and involved with them, actually with the local chapter starting back up here. And I'm still president of our chapter here, as a matter of fact. That really brought me to the forefront with advocacy. It's such a wonderful resource, and there are so many things to know and learn, and so many people do it wrong. I will not take that back. They do not understand that they aren't to bluff, they aren't to hide. There are so many positives about being your own best advocate.
I agree 100%. Hard thing to teach for some, but a wonderful message. And so what led you to, realizing there was a need for people to be helped with lip reading?
I was involved with people that I worked with, family members and the hearing loss chapter members. And then I also became a lion, and all of this whole group of people that were what I call my circle of people, were just amazed how well I lip read and knew things, even with people across the room talking. And they go, "How do you do that? You need to teach us." And after urging for a number of years, and my husband, may he rest in peace, agreeing that this was important, you do it well, why don't you teach it? You've taught other things. And so while he was ill and we didn't go a whole lot of places, I studied and updated myself on lip reading and put together a format that what I call is practical lip reading. So many people are afraid of the subject. They think, "Oh, I'll never learn that." And it's not as difficult as many people make it out to be. I teach it the Sherlock way. In fact, I have a Sherlock hat that I wear, and I teach them clues that are important. And they're amazed. 98% of my students learn more than they thought they would in the first course. And I'm amazed how well they continue on and keep going with lip reading. It's a blessing to really know how, and it takes practice, it takes effort, it takes commitment. But if they do those three things, it's not that hard.
So can you tell me a little bit about it? So when you say the Sherlock method, what do you mean by that?
Well, I'm pretty well convinced that Sherlock Holmes read lips.
Okay.
I think anyone in that field would probably do well to do that. In fact, one of my students was a criminal justice student wanting to work his way into law by being a private detective. And he said, oh, this is really going to help. And I have had teachers and nurses who are, oh, good, I can see what my kids are saying, or the nurses will be able to tell if what the patient is saying is different than what they thought they heard, which is really important. I teach the fact that you do not need every word. That is the biggest thing to know. If you try and get every word with the being the most common word said, how many times in a sentence is that word that you don't need?
Right.
So you may need only three words out of a sentence, 4 words out of a sentence to get the thought of the speaker. That's what you want, is that thought. You don't need every word.
So what is the format in which you teach? In other words, what's an overview of the course? What does it look like?
The course goes into understanding what I call the nitty-gritty of lip reading, and that is what I call you don't need every word, the big 3, the topic, the noun, the verb. And then all of those feed into a funnel. I use a funnel. I have props that I use to help them remember. And that funnels into reading the adverbs and adjectives by knowing the mood and the emotion of the thought of the speaker. And if you get the word excited, or you get the word astonished, or you get the word surprised, does it really matter which word it is? And so I get them to go after the nitty gritty, and then we learn about the speech patterns of people and the mouthing traits. And you put those things together and you have the easy part of lip reading.
And so how is it delivered? Is it a one-on-one coaching? How do you do this?
I've had classes with, my biggest class actually was 15 because of the questions and the individuality. That gets to be a little difficult. I like to keep them at 10 or less if possible. But I have had some one-on-one classes. In fact, one of them was with a retired JAG judge, and he was so appreciative afterwards. And my one-on-one classes probably go a little faster because there's fewer questions. But typically my beginning lip reading class for practical lip reading is 12 hours, and I do it in 3 different formats: twice a week, once a week, or I have a marathon course that I do for those that really need to get it fast. And
so just go through the 12 hours as quickly as you can, or not as quickly, obviously, but all at once or in 2 days type of course?
Yeah, 2 or 3 days for the marathon course.
And do you do that live or is that recorded?
I do all of my training now online since COVID. Before COVID, I was doing classes on the Treasure Coast area, and in fact, I've done it for assistive listening. I'm so used to saying assistive listening.
Assisted living facilities is what I think you're saying.
Assistive living
facilities.
Organization had me come to their place and do it as well. And I've actually started to realize that I could probably still do that in the area if there were some, but I do it on Zoom.
Okay.
Primarily.
And so people schedule it and then they get in. Are you doing it weekly or how often are you doing these?
I offer classes. I put out schedules of classes that are coming in, and then they come back to me and say, this is the one I want. And then they sign up for it through my website.
What is your website?
My website is www.hearingchallengecoach.com.
Okay, so that's hearingchallengecoach.com if people want to take a look at it. And so it can be live or remote. Is it any of it recorded it can be Zoom or live. Is it recorded or are you doing it each time over and over, which is great either way?
I record the lesson at the current time. I record the lessons, and then if someone needs to miss one, I can send them the recording.
Sure.
And as well as the slides, my PowerPoint slides, I send them. And then we go over it the homework. There is homework. A lot of it is fun. The couples have a ball. And we go over the parameters of the previous class and move on to the next lesson. And they learn quite a few words. I try and do it not the book way per se, but the interaction and reading each other's lips method, so that they actually get practice within the lesson.
And so if somebody was, looking to improve their lip reading skills, Cheryl, what would be maybe the top 2 or 3 things you would tell them to kind of give them an idea of the types of things that you teach?
Enunciating is really important. The speech level is important. I have had students that have learned not to talk so quietly and they speak up a little more. They're a little more exhibiting of emotion because they understand how those of us that lip read want to read that emotion in their eyes and their face, as well as body language, which is also part of the course. And I think the biggest thing is to remember not to go after every word.
And so it sounds like the course is for both perhaps the person who is hearing impaired and the significant other of the hearing impaired individual. Is that correct?
Yes, and I have had some friends take it to understand friends that they know, as well as I've been approached now by people with autism that have communication barriers and want to learn lip reading to overcome that. And that is going to be very interesting as well. I've learned more about autism in the last, let's say this year particularly. And then there are people who want to learn because there's someone that they work for or with, and they want to understand and communicate better as well. So I think it's a great thing to have on your resume, by the way.
Sure, but it sounds like, even if you are an advanced lip reader with hearing impairment, this could be a good class for you to give to somebody who you might be around on a regular, in other words, as a gift or some, like, could you please take this on my behalf type of concept, right? Because, I do get, like, if the hearing impaired person enunciates more, the person they're speaking with will likely enunciate more, but it's also important for somebody who is talking to somebody who's hearing impaired to enunciate.
Yes, it is. And among the things that you mentioned, it clues me in also to the fact that there are companies and organizations that can provide scholarships for lip reading.
Oh, really?
So if you had a child or a parent or a cousin or someone or a worker that you think would benefit from lip reading and you wanted to do a scholarship for them so that they could learn to benefit them because perhaps they couldn't do the class, then that is another possible way to do it.
And do you point people to any particular resources or other things? Obviously there's your course, which is wonderful. And then within the course, do you point them to particular resources to help with lip reading or?
Yes, my course actually to some extent includes some coaching for the students as well, but I also I have a session on the apps available. There's over 250 apps for those with hearing challenges. Some are more towards the ones with tinnitus as well, but some of them are for ones that really love music and want to know which ones are better for that. And then there's different purposes of apps. Some are to caption, some are to some of the noise reading apps are out there. A lot of the apps that are out there are free, and some of them have minimal cost. And so I have a session on that so they can decide which is better for them. And I also have a session on the many, many assistive listening devices that are out there, as well as the personal sound amplification product. And with the over-the-counter hearing aids out there now, there's so many people that are jumping in and getting something without realizing what it will do, what it won't do, whether it's going to help them or not. And some of them are just wasting money and time and effort. And this list will show them, different ways to help and point them. First thing you do is go to an ENT.
So that's a question I'll ask you. I assume you have a smart device, phone or something.
I have a smartphone. Yes, sir, I do. And I have a number of apps on here.
Well, that's what I want to ask you. What are the apps on your phone?
I use Live Transcribe. And if that is not effective at the moment for what I'm doing, I also have another one that I use called Otter. And then I also use, I have let me pull it up real quick here. My InnoCaption is my captioning for cell phone calls in and out. And I also like to use one called Articulate, LED in caps, which is great for, you get to choose your font and the color of your words, and it gives you both the person that you're speaking with as well as your interaction with them. And it's great for that. I have those, and there's a noise prevention app on here. I have several of those on here. So that if I'm going into a restaurant and it's too noisy, I know to turn my hearing aids off and just devote my thinking and my understanding to lip reading. And then those are just a few.
No, I mean, it's great, right? Because the ones you use, right? It sounds like you're kind of an expert user on multiple transcribing apps. It sounds like you're using a bunch to kind of, so you're really testing them in the real world to come with the in terms of what are the best apps.
I do research is one of my fortes, and so I like to research what's new and what fits in, and I change my slides on my classes as new things come around. And I also point out things in the home and even in a business or a church that can help people with hearing challenges. A lot of people don't realize what a difference a rug makes, or curtains as opposed to a blank window, and how great plants can be and things like that.
Yeah, ways to break up the sound within the room.
Yes, yeah. There are a lot of positive things we can do in our own environment, and people have no clue. There's so many things to help them, and that's why I'm a coach. That's why I want to help people.
No,
That's really what I want to do, is help me be a blessing to others who have hearing challenges.
No, that's wonderful. And so if somebody said, hey, I don't function as well as I want to work on speech reading, or I'm looking for some of your top things, what would you tell somebody when they contact you about lip reading? What are kind of I would imagine it's not, well, just go to my coaching program. You probably give some tips to people right away. What would those things be?
The tips in general would be to know to prevent their hearing loss. We talked about that. To know to really consider learning lip reading, to find out which apps are out there to help them, and that it's so simple, and it's part of picking up a phone. Actually, when you get used to them and you use the right one, and you can switch it between. And then don't spend money on a device that is not for you. Find out what really works and what will really help you. And you can spend hours doing research. Whereas if I find out in your particular instance, I'll point you in that direction and save you a lot of hassle.
Sure. That's wonderful. So Cheryl, what's your favorite sound?
My favorite sound is actually bells.
No, that's wonderful. Are you involved?
Church bells. Yeah. One of my tinnitus sounds, I've had 5 different sounds and got rid of one because it was from DMJ of all things. But my other sounds, my most common sound is as though I'm in an aviary with birds. So I used to love the sound of birds. Now it's not really my favorite.
So for everybody, this is Cheryl Nolte. She's a hearing challenge coach. And again, Cheryl, if people wanted to get a hold of you, where would they go? How can listeners get a hold of you?
They could go to my website, www.hearingchallengecoach.com. There is a contact page on there, and you can either send something in writing to me if you prefer. You can contact me by text message. My text message phone number is there. And you can fill out the contact sheet and go through the website.
Well, this has been great. Thank you so much for sharing your perspective and tips on communication and speech reading. And I appreciate your passion to help other people who are suffering from hearing loss.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sims.
Thanks for coming on, Cheryl.
Thanks for tuning in to the Listen Up podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get updates on future episodes.